Okay. So good morning, everyone. We'll begin with the reflections on universal well-being.
May I abide in well-being, in freedom from affliction, in freedom from hostility, in freedom from ill will,
In freedom
from anxiety, and may I maintain well-being in myself. May everyone abide in well-being, in freedom from hostility, in freedom from ill will, in freedom from anxiety, and may they maintain well-being in themselves. May all be released from all suffering, and may they not be parted from the good fortune they have attained. When they act upon intention, all beings are the owners of their action, and inherit its results. Their future is born from such action, companion to such action, and results will be their home. All actions with intention, be they skillful or harmful, of such acts there will be the heirs.
Let's continue to read from Ajahn Mun's biography. We're in the section where he's at the final moments of his life, and you can see sincerity and care and concern from his disciples. So last time we talked about how Ajahn Mun wanted to move from a small village to a larger, town or city, because he was worried about the animals that would be killed on his behalf. Or maybe it's not on his behalf, but killed because of his death in a small village. And in their tradition, Thai forest tradition, or the Thai culture, offering meat to monastics isn't forbidden. And so oftentimes the lay community would actually offer meat to the monastics or practitioners. And so his staying in this village would actually cause a great deal of suffering for the animals around. So here, Ajahn Mun, here we go. After the morning meal was over, and everyone awaited in readiness for the journey to start, right? Ajahn Mun is leaving the village. Emotions began to run high in the crowd surrounding his hut, as the local people gathered to see him off, gave vent to their despair one last time. Many monks and novices swelled the crowd. They too felt the strain. The deep sadness oppressing their hearts slowly welled up, and tears flowed quietly, dampening their cheeks. At that moment, Ajahn Mun appeared, carried by a group of his senior disciples. A moment of further heightened emotion. As the monks carried him down the steps and placed him on the stretcher, the mixture of affection, respect, and despair that everyone had kept bottled up inside freely poured out. Men, women, monks, and novices were no longer able to hold back their flood of tears. Onlookers wept openly, expressing an unrestrained and deep sense of sorrow. I myself could not avoid getting caught up in the despondent mood pervading that sad occasion, despite the fact that I was accompanying Ajahn Mun when he left. The air filled with sounds of weeping and crying. People called, begging Ajahn Mun, please get better. Don't pass away from this world, leaving us forever in unbearable sadness. They're almost inconsolable at that point. In his great compassion, he sympathized with how poor their community was. This they knew. Yet they couldn't help but feel terribly miserable watching their cherished treasure, over whom they had faithfully kept watch for so many years, slip away from them forever. He was departing now. There was nothing they could do to prevent it. As Acharya Mun was carried past, the sounds of their heartfelt laments surged along the path, a tidal wave of grief inundating the hearts of those who lined the route. As he passed by, everything appeared gray and bleak, as though their lives had been suddenly snuffed out. Even the grasses and trees, though insensible to the unfolding scene before them, appeared to wither up and die in response. As Acharya Mun left the peaceful shade of the forest sanctuary, where he and his disciples had lived so contently, a place where so many ordinary people had come to find shelter over the years, the monastery suddenly felt deserted, even though many monks still remained. Suddenly, no longer had that enormous tree with a thick, broad foliage that had always given so much peace and comfort to all who had come to take shelter there. The heart-rending, anguished cries of those wanting to offer their undying devotion to the sasana was an immensely sad, forlorn sound indeed. They were witnessing the departure of one man who embodied the high ideals of their unshakable religious faith. Long after the procession had passed through the village, and the sounds of inconsolable grief had faded into the distance, hundreds of monks and lay people continued to walk behind his stretcher, their long, drawn faces mirroring the somber, cheerless spirit of the occasion. Walking along in complete silence, like mourners in a funeral procession, walking along over a close friend or relative, they did their best to come to terms with the heartbreak. No one spoke a word, but in their hearts they pondered long and deeply on their shattered hopes, the overwhelming feeling being that all was now lost. It seemed then as if we were taking his corpse away to dispose of it, even though he was still very much alive. The realization that all hope was now gone, that he would never return again, had fully sunk in. The more we thought about it, the sadder we became. Yet we couldn't stop thinking about it. We all walked along in a kind of melancholy daze, contemplating thoughts of despair. I must confess to being shamefully inadequate in this regard. The whole journey I thought only of how I was about to lose my one true refuge in life. No longer would there be someone to rely on when questions arose in my practice, as they so often did. This distance from Ban Nong Pheu to the district seat of Phana Nakhon was approximately 15 miles, but the long hours of walking passed almost unnoticed. Walking behind him, knowing he was dying, I thought only of how much I was going to miss my teacher. I desperately wanted him to continue living at the time, his final days corresponding to a crucial stage in my own meditation practice, a time when I had many unresolved problems to work out. No matter how much I pondered the predicament, I always arrived at the same conclusion. My dependence on him would have to be terminated soon. This made the future look bleak. We'll stop there. The next passage, they actually bring him to the village, and he passes away. And we can see what happens at that point. I think in that kind of heartfelt account of Acharya Mun being taken out of the village, having been cared for many years by the people there, we could imagine their sadness and grief of losing such a virtuous, respected, caring teacher. And I can't help but reflect a little bit on ourselves. those of us here at the monastery, maybe people online, that we're here still blessed, you could say, with many of the senior disciples of Master Hua. I'm sure when Master Hua passed away, they had similar feelings. I've heard the stories. And it was painful for many to lose, as Ajahn Mahaboowa said, a refuge. Someone that gave them inspiration and hope, guidance and support. Maybe some humor when they needed it. And so they lost their teacher, you could say, or maybe you could say they never lost him. If we're looking from a greater picture of the Dharma, where the body is impermanent and just passes away, but this deeper spirit continues. But still, we do have our senior teachers now. But I'm definitely aware that many of them are in their 70s. I remember Chirfasher just had her birthday and said, I'm now older than Master Hua when he passed away. And so I guess to myself, how do I hold that? How do we hold that? For one, there's really a cherishing of our time now, where we still can receive their guidance, where they're still actively teaching. A sense of cherishing our time with them, and taking, you could say, our life energy and really applying it to the Dharma, to not casually let the time slip by. I know for myself and for others as well, coming to the monastery now or coming to the university to study, many come because the senior teachers are still around, still teaching. And it's not for sure as the years go by if that will still be the case. So that's one perspective, clearly, the perspective of cherishing our teachers. Another perspective is that old age, sickness, and death doesn't wait for until we get old to die. We can go at any time as well. And if we just take that perspective from losing somebody we care about or respect, from another perspective, we lose the person that's we think we are, and all the ways that we relate to the world disintegrates. The question is, are we ready? Are we ready to face that time? And so it's sometimes a kind of a somber reflection, because it kind of wakes us up a little bit from the kind of fantasies or the constant planning that we're doing. But sometimes it's a way to kind of use this term samvega, the sense of urgency, to kind of shock us a little bit out of our stupor and say, really, what am I doing with my life? And that shock, you could say in some sense, is what actually propels us on the spiritual path. We actually realize how dangerous it is here in samsara, in this kind of place where things are truly uncertain, where we can't find refuge in anything in this conditioned realm. Even in our ideas of a enlightened spiritual teacher, even our ideas and our attachment to their bodies is unreliable. So where is the true place of refuge? It's actually to go to what they're teaching, what they're pointing at, to really cultivate our hearts and minds, to find this place of liberation and freedom that's unconditioned. And then to take that heart in service to everyone. So maybe today, it's a good day to reflect, how am I spending my time? And when I come to the end of my life, can I say I've lived a good life? Have I spent my time well? And with that reflection, see if we can make today a day that we really live our life well, to cherish what we have and the moments of our lives. Okay, let's do 3 steps, 1 bow. Hậu, 我们来3步1拜。